Well, the Insanity Project really, for me, it deals with mental illness in America, but it deals with mental illness through the lens of African Americanism. And what I mean by that is, again, do African Americans experience America at the same time? So I think that we do, and I would say that this album is basically making a statement that we do experience America in the same rate, and that the way that African Americans experience America is a form of insanity.
It's 400 years of oppression enough. I'm just asking, should I even go a couple more months or start blasting, running through downtown DC?
Well, the music that I chose for this album were beats that I had just kind of like laying around, and the way it relates to the African American experience is a lot of different ways. I mean, for one, it's hip hop, right? So it's an art form that was created by marginalized race and people in America to express themselves, to push back against whatever was the political climate of the late 70s, early 80s, to kind of give a voice to the inner city. So I mean, with that right there is the African American experience. But some of the music that I chose in musical influences are not just hip hop. So, there's samples, there's jazz samples, there's live instrumentation, there's interpolation of folk, of rock. Because again, to me, all these artistic art forms or music genres basically come out of soul, gospel, funk. I mean, African Americans. I feel like we have created most of the genres of music in America. So I use all those art forms. And it's weird because I'll tell you a funny story. One day, I'm actually listening to Gary Clark Jr. and a woman, an African American woman, told me to turn that white music off, and I'm like, it's Gary Clark Jr. But she didn't know who he was.
Hey, what's the news broadcasting? Man, I don't care, keep dancing. Now we all in the mix. Devil walking, I miss. Turn on channel 6. Shit like World War 6.
Oh yeah, well the lyrics that I chose for this record, a lot of them are inspired by stories or inspired by news, like actual news coverage or actual conversations that I've had with people. So I've actually taken voices and used those voices to kind of inspire some of the verses for the record. Like some of the lyrics that I chose are very angry, they're very violent, they're very aggressive. And that voice to me, when you hear me and I'm talking about violence and I'm talking about, shooting someone, or I'm talking about, drugs, is actual real conversations that I had with real people who were living that particular lifestyle, that I was inspired by what they were saying. I mean, I was also depressed by what they were saying and depressed by hearing the social ills that these people are continuously confronted with on a day-to-day basis. But to me, I was inspired to almost act as if I am this person and write lyrics from these particular places. And then some of the lyrics are very personal to me as well, on the album, where I'm talking about my mother, or I'm talking about my father, or I'm talking about people that I know, or friends that I may have lost, through illness or even street violence, or whatever the case may be. Because all these things again roll into how African Americans are experiencing America. I mean, through violence, through health issues, through disease, diabetes or high blood pressure. Like all these different things are kind of compacted into this thing that I view as insanity, just from even the food deserts, the unhealthy diets, and look, and I drink and I smoke weed too, but the amount of it just feels like it's just a lot, and it's all rolled into this one particular view of the world.
Life's a gift, heaven sent, should've came with a ribbon. Checkerboard tuxedo on Thanksgiving, New Year's Eve. I'm with my spouse wearing purple label.
Well, my personal experience as an African American is interesting because it goes back to, the inspiration of the whole entire album. So, again, do African Americans experience America in the same way? And I'm talking about a rich African American or a impoverished African American, or even a homeless person who is dealing with mental issues. I mean, are both these two people on two opposite sides of the spectrum? Are they dealing with America the same way? Are they experiencing America the same way? I actually say yes. And my reason is, Uncle Sam, I mean, for, all intents and purposes, to just kind of sum America up into like a person, right, is walking around with a knife and he's stabbing every African American individual that's in America through oppression, through, bad school systems, through, unfair housing, through unfair education, through police, brutality, through harassment, all these different things, through loan denial, through redlining, all these different things are going on. And Uncle Sam's walking around with this knife and he's stabbing people. And you walk and you see an African American who's homeless, mentally ill, obviously, and he's screaming at the top of his lungs, "Ah, fuck you, motherfucker, fuck you, ah!" And he's getting stabbed. And that's his reaction, right? And then I'm sitting here doing an interview talking about my reaction, where I could go into a meeting where I'm talking about theater and I'm talking to, theatrical colleagues, and they could even, I mean, if they could only see what I saw, so if they can see Uncle Sam standing next to me, constantly stabbing me in the stomach, they would say, "My friend, there is a man that is stabbing you in the stomach." And I said, "Oh, well, yeah, ignore him. Let's continue talking about the project." And like, but how can you even continue when you're being constantly stabbed? So I propose, like, who's crazier? Is it me for constantly being stabbed and trying to continue on with my business meeting, or the insane, or we call insane, African American man who's homeless, who gets stabbed one time and goes, "Ouch! Ow! Ah! You stabbed me." Whose response is normal? I would argue my response is more insane. Well, my personal experience is, I feel like I definitely had a blessed life. It's definitely been, I mean, if there was a thing called black privilege, I mean, I guess I would basically be in that category, but it doesn't necessarily state that I grew up rich, because I didn't. I grew up impoverished, basically. My mom worked 2 jobs, my dad worked 10 jobs, we lived in a 3-room apartment, not 3-bedroom, but like 3 rooms. So it was like, my mom would sleep in the living room and she gave me the bedroom so I could actually have friends over, have company, and have some kind of life, which is really interesting because I think a lot of kids, moms or parents, they may have been reversed. You know what I mean? But my mom slept in the living room for years, and then we were able to get a house and actually have some kind of participation in what people may consider the American dream. But though this is early on life, and this is an apartment building too, so we lived in an apartment complex. But at the same time, I feel like the way I was raised, my mom was an intellectual. She always read. My uncles were smart. They always read. I mean, they were on drugs. I mean, someone was smoking crack and all this kind of stuff. But I mean, before the crack epidemic, I mean, these guys, some of these guys were really, intellectual and intelligent, had, really good jobs and stuff like that. But I think my experience, my personal experience in America, or my own personal experience just being an African American, is a lot different too, because of, my life and music. So I started making records when I was 14 years old. So that automatically took me out of one pocket and put me somewhere else. And then, almost to a certain degree, working with the Roots, those guys, and the way that they treated me was almost like they sheltered me from a lot of even just the crazy stuff that was going on in the music industry, to even the stuff that was going on in the streets. Because, I was a street kid. My first time in the studio, I had a gun on me, and the producer was like shocked, and he really pulled me to the side and was like, yo, you're not that kind of person. He's like, I don't know who told you that you should be running around with a gun, you should be running around strapped, but you shouldn't be. And you say, yo, I don't ever want to see that again. And I think now, I think those kind of experiences are absent in what's going on in African-American culture. I mean, if kids show up to the studio with a gun, a producer may not even say anything. He may just glaze over it. Or someone like an older person from an older generation, they may even think that it's cool for them to have a gun. They may think that that's part of the lifestyle or whatever. But the people that actually, I could only say that my life experience is a spiritual journey. I could only say that God really had his hands on me specifically, from taking me from the people that I was dealing with to putting me with people around like Kenyatta Sanders, who's Kilo, one of the Roots producers, to Richard Nichols, who was the Roots manager, to actually being around Tariq, or Amir, and having these people continuously have to steer me in the right direction. I mean, a lot of times where a kid just continuously keeps fucking up, keeps selling drugs, keeps doing this stuff, they just be like, man, he's a lost cause. But they just kind of just kept constantly returning me, repositioning me to have the experience that I have. So I think that my life experiences are definitely way different than a lot of African Americans in America. But at the same time, when the blue and red lights go off behind me while I'm driving down the street, it all comes back, immediately. And now I'm just another nigger that's sitting in a car waiting to be read his rights, or shot, or arrested, or let go, or we just don't know where it could possibly turn, So again, no matter who you are, even like Barack Obama, or it's so many black, I can't even think about the name, but let's just say Barack Obama is driving down the street and the cop doesn't know it's Barack Obama at first, and just sees a black guy in a nice car in a nice neighborhood and just decided to pull him over. You know what I'm saying? And this, oh shit, sorry, Mr. President. Oh, man, my bad. But I mean, you see where I'm going with this. But even for that brief moment, Barack can automatically pull a memory of when this experience happened to him before in his earlier life, where the situation wasn't good. Oh, I think it speaks deeply. Even just with the intro, like on my last album, I had, President Donald Trump on the intro. And again, on this record, President Donald Trump makes an appearance with some of the wild things that he says. And I think that he has definitely made himself a focus to eradicate some of the major things that are set up to actually aid African Americans along this journey of what is supposed to be the American dream. And how do we participate in that? And he is really going out of his way to eradicate some of those things. So to highlight the anger that I think that African Americans should feel is, the song Red Rag, Blue Rag, where I'm basically making a letter. It's basically Red Rag, Blue Rag is a letter to the Bloods and Crips, a personal letter from me, where I'm just like, hey, what's going on with you guys? Like, is that still a thing? Like, you guys are really banging against each other, or has it turned into more of like a corporate thing where it's just like, hey, this is what we represent, that's what they represent. But when you really think about how many Bloods and Crips it actually is, and how many like Proud Boys, there's so many that could be activated in a positive manner that could benefit the African American community, is like, I'm just kind of baffled by it. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, why don't we just take the red rag and the blue rag and just tie them together and put away all the nonsense and say, hey, let's focus on what's actually at stake here? Because kids will listen to those kind of guys. You know what I'm saying? Like, the kids in the streets that actually are looking for the answers to life, are looking for some ways to change their lives and elevate their lives from a different standpoint. Some of these Bloods and Crip dudes are real smart. You know what I'm saying? Like I've spoken to some of them, and they're like, yeah, Dice, that's a great idea, but it'll never happen. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, automatically from the rip, they just kind of shut it down. And, you know, I mean, I was disappointed by that. Now, some people thought it was cool. Like, you know, I saw some videos of Wu Gang, you know, which is like it's something going on in New York, I guess. But I thought that was real cool. I was just like, man, but if we could actually get these guys focused on something that was a larger issue, and I guess that goes back to speaks to, like, you know, what is the Black African American experience? Is it lined up as like just a regular American experience? Is there someone that could go to the White House or talk to Donald Trump on behalf of African American people? You know, is there a person like that? Or the people that we have that are like that, are they already inside a system that is not really going to benefit African Americans as a whole? I don't know. But Red Rag, Blue Rag, that's the song. It's a dream of mine. One day they'll put the guns down, tie the rags together.
Red rag, blue rag, tie 'em together. Yeah. We sliding together. Yeah. We riding together. Red rag, blue rag.
Yeah, I do believe African Americans experience America in the same way. I mean, even just like even like a life trajectory, I guess. You know, the way that it affects me, if anything that affects me personally or affects me psychologically is going to come out in the way I express myself as an artist, you know? So I do believe that African Americans experience America in the same way, which is why I wrote this album, because I know so many different people in so many different parts of their life, you know, that all kind of have like the same kind of beginning. And some of them don't. Like I know African Americans who were born wealthy, who parents own banks, who now they've taken their parents' banking skills and parlayed that into portfolios of upwards of hundreds of 200s of millions of dollars. You know, I know people who grew up in the hardcore streets of North Philly that turned into be CEOs of pharmaceutical companies that, you know, made hundreds of millions of dollars just personally. But again, the life trajectory of those people, these are anomalies, right? So if someone is born impoverished and someone that's born rich, they can actually be on the same trajectory as far as being a catalyst to being arrested or being sent to prison. So that right there is kind of like where it all evens out at. It's like the judicial system, which is like the equalizer for a person that's a wealthy African American that was born rich to a person who was born impoverished. The judicial system is kind of like where it all meets ahead, and that's the way that I guess a person could live their life, you know, because being rich doesn't also automatically make a person a moral person, or they have moral fiber where they say, well, I'm going to live my life in this particular way and order. Sometimes those things can spin out of chaos just the same way a person on the street. And I feel like a lot of times when that happens to a white person or another person of an ethical background, they may receive a slap on the wrist, whereas because this person is black, they get treated like they're just black. So all their social class and economic status, all that stuff kind of disappears. Like, I mean, we can see that right now. And I'm like, you know, and over again, I don't want to come to anyone's defense or pick a particular side between, you know, Cassie Ventura or, you know, Sean Combs, you know what I'm saying? But what I can say is I think that he should have got bail. And I think that in America, African American, no matter what their social status is, they're guilty to proven innocent.
I guess every generation has its go-to. Same situations adolescents always go to. False sense of innocence and adolescence broke you. Sometimes I think that
Yeah, I work with a few different people on this project, and everybody that I work with, I really have a strong relationship with. It's a long-lasting work relationship. It's, you know, I love to work with new people, but actually, I did work with somebody new on this project. But everybody that I work with brought a wide range of just knowledge and experience. You know, Kari Mateen, who produced one of my favorite tracks on the album, Friends. You know, he's just a phenomenal talent in so many different ways, from the stuff he does in film, from the stuff that he collaborated with the Roots early on in his career, to Nouveau Riche, where me and him collaborated with on so many different projects, to, you know, his solo stuff, to my solo stuff, to, you know, like I said, Nouveau Riche, to Tess Henley, to, you know, just, I mean, so much, you know, we talk almost every day. So that's like a constant collaborator, constant conversation of art and expression that just goes on between us, that does end up in our conversations end up with a song. You know what I mean? Like, it always, that's like the sum of what happens. And then, you know, Reverend Jamie Knight is on the album, and she brings, you know, so many things just spiritually and just into the aspect of the God and religion and where I am in my spiritual journey. It was great to collaborate with her on, you know, another song. Open Mike Eagle is a person I just really respect, have a tremendous amount of admiration for as an artist, and he's on the project. You know, Truck North, you know, I always work with Truck, and Truck's on the album, but he's on the album in a different way, you know, so, you know, we will get into that, I'm sure, later. But, you know, Truck North definitely is a constant collaborator with me, somebody that I have a tremendous amount of respect for, his intelligence, his pen level, you know, his ghostwriting, his playwriting. I mean, he's a phenomenal guy. So I love to work with these super intelligent people. And, you know, and then Tron's, the producer from The Works, did some production on the album. Just a phenomenal guy to work with, super talented. And his production, his ear is so different than what so many other producers come up with, that, you know, when you hear a beat and it's just like some of these beats are just bangers, you know what I mean? So they just bang, but they bang without any purpose. You know, it's just, they're fantastic. They're mind-blowing. They make you dance. But I mean, when you really get to the musicality of it, there's not much really to unpack. And I think with the producers that I work with and the samples that we use and the instruments that we use on the live instrumentation things, I think it really came together in a way that I think it will be inspiring to other arts.
Been a minute, it's been a minute since I seen my family and friends.
You know, that's a funny question. How does my playwriting influence my music, when it's actually the reverse? You know, my history of, you know, writing and collaborating with like the Roots and Richard Nichols, because Richard was like a real stickler for like rewrites, right? You know what I'm saying? So he was like, Dice, he said, that's good, keep this line, rewrite the rest. I'm like, wait, the one line out of all the rest of the songs? Like, yeah, no, build everything around this one line. I'm like, well, damn, okay. So I think like working with somebody like him, who was just like a perfectionist, really helped me just be able to just write a tremendous amount, you know what I mean, in like a short time, and really be able to compact my thoughts and get it on paper and understand exactly what that was. Yeah, I don't know. I hope I answered that question right, but
Without an injection of new blood, new thoughts, and new ideas, financial wealth, I'm talking about for all of the years, slavery, Jim Crow, the crack epidemic.
you know what I want people to take away from listening to the Insanity Project, I don't necessarily have anything specific I want every individual to walk away with. I think that people will walk away with different things. And I think that those things are going to be, you know, based on how that person looks at the world. You know, some people may listen to the Insanity Project, it may make them upset. Some people may listen to the Insanity Project, it may make them cry. Some people may listen to it, they may think it's funny, you know. I have no idea. But I do know that it's going to have some kind of impact on people's lives. The people that do experience it, the people that do listen to it in its entirety, I think will get the full experience of what I'm trying to relate artistically, and which is to make them feel something.
Got out of line, always spank my tail. It's nuance, it's something all black families inherit. The black mother's bigger than one soul is disparate. I can hear it.
I see this album contributing a lot of different ways. I think, you know, for artists that will hear it, I hope they can be inspired by it somehow. I think that it may change people's perspective on how albums are actually made, especially rap albums. And I hope that it can actually change the way that people are taking lyrics, with so much mumble rap, and so much, just sex over sex narrative rap. I think it would be great for people to start actually using hip hop as for what it was actually intended to be, which is a tool for marginalized voices, and to not just be talking about Don Julio and acting a Fulio, or somebody ate your coochie, or I'm trying to get my dick sucked, or I'm trying to make some money, or I'm making some money and I'm spending some money. I think that there's so much more to African Americans' voices than that. And I do enjoy some of that. Like, do I listen to Playboy Cardi when I ride in a car? Yes. You know what I'm saying? Do I like Future? Yeah. Do I listen to Drake? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Do I think Drake is better than another rapper? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Nah, you could just take that out. But I shouldn't even have said that. You know what I'm saying? But once the fight puts a mic in front of my face, I start talking shit. You know what I'm saying? I start talking shit. And I don't want to do that. Not today. I don't want to talk shit today. But yeah, I think all those voices are beautiful Black voices that need to be able to express themselves for how they feel at that particular moment. But what I do feel is an issue is that the other voices get drowned out by sex, by drugs, and it's not necessarily an aid to this African American experience. We need all these voices. Their voices are great. We need other voices too that express different narratives, and I think that's diversity inside a culture. So that's a subculture inside of a culture. Well, this album definitely reflects my growth from the previous stuff that I've done. I think just because I've grown so much from my last body of work, which was the narrative, which this may even almost feel like a part 2 of the narrative, but which I even think the narrative was better than the work that I put out before that, which was like, Greatest Rapper Never and all that stuff. And even some of the stuff that I did with the Roots. I think that everything is an elevation for me, personally. Not for anybody else, but just my own personal journey, my own personal growth. This album definitely reflects that. But I think it definitely respects spiritual growth too. Getting closer and connected with God. I think there's a big thing for me that has been absent in other projects.
Or meteorite falling from the heaven sky. I don't have input, really kissing the earth goodbye.
Well, one of the biggest challenges for this project was really, getting in a space where I wanted to create, and getting in a space where I wanted to actually release music. Because for a while I didn't want to release anything. I had sent some of the beats to other artists, who had wrote songs to them, and their songs were great to some of these beats. I was like, damn, he killed that shit, you know what I'm saying? But they wound up not using it. So I was just like, oh, well, I guess they're not going to use these beats. So I was like, well, I'll use it, you know what I'm saying? So that was another thing. And then when I finally, because my mother had passed away too. So there was that. So it was the narrative. I lost my mother, I lost my father, I lost my grandmother. And during that time, I was just kind of back to back, boom, 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 boom. So I just was kind of just disconnected from everything. And then I come out of that fog, and I feel like I'm almost like a different person to a certain degree. You know what I'm saying? And that's what the Insanity Project is. And so it was challenges, but the triumphs is that the project is done. It was mixed by Jason Goldstein, who is an experienced mixer, engineer, producer, one of the best in the world, for sound engineering. So that to me is exciting, to get the files back and to listen to them, how they sound different now and how they sound bigger and brighter. It's great. So Insanity Project.
Always had a dream I would make it big out in showbiz. always hit the high notes, but no one noticed.
I'll tell you a fun story. So, am I insane? I'm not a psychologist, but one day I'm on a plane. It's like I missed my first flight, so now kind of like I'm putting myself at the mercy of the airline. They like, look, we get you another flight. You gotta get you another flight to Philly, but you no first class. You gotta sit in the middle. Only middle seat. It's only one seat on the plane. You gotta sit in the middle. I'm like, oh, all right. I'm like, it's only 2 hours. I'm going from Miami to stuff. I sit down in my seat. There's a gentleman to my left, and he's got his sunglasses on. He's kind of sitting like this. He's leaning on the window seat, and I think he's asleep. He appears to be asleep. There's a woman sitting on my left. So he's on my right, she's on my left. I'm in the middle. We're sitting there for a while, and the guy on the right says, honey. And I'm like, oh shit, he's not asleep. He said, how did you pay for the rental car? And she says, huh? And I'm sitting there too. I'm like, huh? What the fuck is he talking about, right? So she says, what do you mean? He says, cash or points? And she's like, cash. So he let off a noise. He was like, oh. He let off a noise. Somebody just stabbed him in the gut with like a rusty bottle or something like that. And I mean, he's being a dickhead, right? That's what I said to myself. This is what I'm saying to myself. I was like, and they're together. So I said, yo, why don't you guys sit next to each other? That way I can get the window or the aisle seat, which would be much better for me. He grabbed my arm hard as she says, you don't move. I was like, fuck. Now I really don't like this guy. So anyway, me and the wife struck up a conversation. We're talking. She's like, oh, we're going to Philadelphia to see our son. He's graduating from, psychiatric school or whatever, however, therapist or psychologist, whatever their school is, he's graduating from that. They're both psychologists. Both of them, right? I got a psychologist on my right. I got a psychologist on my left. They're both Jewish doctors. I'm a black North Philly rap gangster activist. This is going to be an interesting conversation. So she basically says, what's got you going back to Philly? I said, well, I got to rush back to Philly because I'm actually having an issue with my girlfriend at the time. My girlfriend caught me cheating. And she said, well, what happened? Why are you cheating? What makes a person cheat? Cheating is not good. She's going on all these different things. And she's kind of like unraveling me as I'm giving my answers. And she says, well, what happened? I said, well, I have another girlfriend that I was dating. She says, wait, so you have two girlfriends? And she said, well, why aren't you just being honest with either one of these women? I was like, oh, well, I don't know. I don't know why I'm not being honest with either one of these women. She says, well, how did you get caught? I said, well, I bought them the same thing for Christmas. And the person at the store must have switched the receipts in the box. And she said, what do you mean switch the receipts? I said, well, one was extra small and one was a medium. So one receipt, the medium has the extra small receipt and the extra small receipt has the medium. So she was like, oh my God. She's like, and she found out that you were cheating? Basically, well, why didn't you just say that it could have been a mistake at the thing? I said, well, I just collapsed under the questioning and, I folded. So she was like, oh, okay. So we went into a few different things and she asked about my lifestyle and what I did. And she was counting my drinks too that I was having on the plane. So at the end of the ride, she says, do you want my diagnosis? And I said, diagnosis of what? She says, well, I just was kind of going through a thing. She's like, I think you're a really intelligent guy. She's like, you're really complex. And I said, so what are you saying, doc? I'm insane? She said, oh my God, you're clearly insane. She says, but I need more time with you to figure out what kind of insanity it is. She says, I feel like you may be something different. And she gave me a big hug and I never saw her again. But sometimes I feel insane. Sometimes I feel sane. Sometimes I think in different situations, they can make you crazy or you could allow them to make you crazy. I think, and that's kind of what happens. How far will we allow ourselves to be crazy? And I allow myself to be quite crazy. I like to to drink, and I like to have fun. I like to go out and eat crazy food. You know that. I like to, smoke a lot of weed, and I have some thorns on my side as well, that I think all people like me can kind of deal with and have to confront it at certain times. But I think with God, all things are possible. So I'll say that.
This shit I'm writing and it rivals Amadeus. This shit I'm writing and it rivals Nostradamus. I ain't the type to make a threat, I'm making promise.